Manhattan. We're going under 3 bridges on the other side, but we kept going. Well, that's when you find out there's a total of 19 bridges on the other side of Manhattan. There's only 1 bridge on this side, but there's a reason there's only 1. Because when you look at that bridge, you're looking up a state border. New York State on the right, New Jersey on the left, past the bridge, past top Manhattan, top Bronx, a little bit beyond. And it is not easy to build bridges, or tunnels for that matter, across state borders. Not easy to get 2 governors who are going to pay for something, but you know what? This is just not a good place for a state border. Remember, folks, this wasn't our idea. Oh, no. It was one of those boards the British left us with. Think about it. The British don't always leave with the best boards. You post-colonials know what I'm talking about. So we're in the Hudson River, and that's what we call this now. We used to call this the North River as opposed to East River. We're never on a river, folks. Lower trips on the salt water. East River's an ocean tributary. When over there, we're going to be in the ocean. It's going to look like Brooklyn, but technically it's the ocean. The Hudson's a tidal estuary, so it's got fresh water up there somehow, but not so much down here. Lincoln's down here, the Indians are first called as the Humpton Top, where it flows both ways. Change direction, it's still not a river. We call it the Hudson River because in 1609, Henry Hudson, he was an English explorer in the employ of the Dutch, sailed up this river, barely stopping at the end of Manhattan. Because Henry Hudson did not come here to start a colony, no. Henry Hudson was here to find a quick and easy passage to India. They found the Hudson River was the best quick and easy passage to Albany, and nobody wanted to go there. But it gave the Dutch a claim. 15 years later, came back, claimed everything you see all around you. That was New Netherlands, so the center of it all. They put the first colonial city of New Amsterdam, and that's what became the city of New York. And as we come on this turn, you might feel a bump, and why that be? Look back to the ferry port. See those old brick structures with the green vents in the middle of the ferry port? Well, look over New Jersey to your right now. You see a bigger version of that same structure over there in Weehawken. Those are the ventilation shafts for Lincoln Tunnel. So Lincoln Tunnel's beneath us now. Lincoln Tunnel, not our first underwater automotive tunnel, not the longest. It is, however, the busiest underwater automotive tunnel in the world. Most traffic, about 21 million cars a year. In rush hour, the slowest moving. Now the Hudson, on the other hand, was a pretty quiet river in the colonial days, and the Dutch were really here to set up shipping. They were here to take over the trade fee from Belgium, the American Indians, which they did. But they quickly came to realize that New York Harbor, there ahead of us, was where the gold money was. And as we pull out, we see down at the bottom of New York Harbor, and at the bottom we'll see an even longer bridge. There it is. The Verrazano Narrows Bridge, 1964, off Carmel, Nigeria. There's a bridge on the left, it's down on the right. When the Verrazano Narrows, that bridge crosses, and it's named for it, is a gateway to the ocean. It's a 2-mile-long strait from New York Harbor to the Atlantic Ocean, which meant Manhattan had access to the ocean, while being protected from it. It was naturally a safe harbor, so the Dutch made a port. The British take over later, make a bigger port, but then after we run out of British crown, the Americans made New York Harbor the biggest and busiest port in the world. That's by the early 19th century. But the Hudson was still pretty quiet. The East River was where the action was at first. The action quickly shifts over here. It gets a lot busier when we dig a little ditch across New York State called the Erie Canal. Now the Hudson is not just a passable Albany, get rid of all 5 of the Great Lakes and beyond from the ocean. Also, about that time, Mayor Robert Fulton, let's be clear, he did not win the steamboat. That Steve Jobs had been smart from him. He wanted to get more money for it. Second house gets the cheese. Well, these things again, it's growing for years before. And we said the biggest business port in the world for over 150 years. But anyway, so yeah, but maybe the port didn't look this nice. In fact, the waterfront didn't look this nice. The waterfront then looked a bit nasty. And there was a man who worked on the waterfront back in those days, a man named Colonel Melville. He asked the government what we did. His day job was customs clerk in the Gansevoort Market, as it was now called the Meatpacking District. And Melville worked on the waterfront, but he wrote that Manhattan is an island where no one looks at the sea, because nobody wanted to live, deal with that waterfront. You went there to work and crash complex on your left now, all about shipping through 1982. Now it's restaurants, sporting facilities, see that big cage netting? You guys will bounce the back of that cage in front of this one. And TV production facilities in back to there is where they used to shoot the interior scenes. Lola, and they still shoot Lola. That's for you. And there. And then we got this is a little great new season Lola. So I came back to those last year, February 1st, 2022. I could refresh me of that's good. There are things out here on the left. And that's a big one. On the left, all those white pigs sitting everywhere. That's the little island in part in the Hudson River. Built and opened during COVID. And built by way used to have Pier 54 as a minivan. That's by 14th Street. But Pier 54 is connected to that big fancy boat that never got built, the Titanic. It's not where the Titanic was at. It was at the Pier 59. That's where I'm looking off. It's not a 50 pier then. That belonged to White Star Line, that was the Titanic. That never got here, but the Carpathia, you might say the rescue ship, came here literally towing the boats from lifeboats from the Titanic up the Hudson, left that property Pier 59, and then docked at their pier, Pier 54, New York City, their boss. And that pier is gone. But you see that rusty metal arch? We like relics, so we kept that there. That is the entrance of Pier 54 again by 14th Street. Now I talk about the Port of New York, I'm talking about both sides, and that's another state on the right. Hoboken, New Jersey, on your right now, is a big part of the Port of New York. Hoboken's not a big place. We call it the Mile Square City. That's a fair assessment of Hoboken's actual size. It starts just north of the hill with the Siemens Institute of Technology and ends with the train station at the clock tower. That's it. But if you're over to Hoboken for any reason, check out that train station. Even if you're not taking the train, it's from 1907. It's been fully restored, and it shows you how it used to work. Because when that opened, we had no bridges and tunnels across the Hudson operational whatsoever. So you come to New York City by train in those days, all the trains would terminate at the Hudson River. That was one of then many terminals. Your trip to then, you got off the train, walked in the building, hopped on the boat, finished your trip to Manhattan that way. And you do it that way through that building again. I remember the floors in that station were rotting away. They're only restored, reopened in 2014. See, by the time we lost the port, we thought we were getting rid of all the commuter ferries. We kept this kind of all ferry though, but that was the only one running in the city by 1967. We figured neither of us. Just get your car, drive and Lincoln Tunnel, right? Let me drive you in there, take a rush hour, and go enjoy it. You don't get those hours of your life back. We needed options. In 1986, it was like an experiment. Temporary docks next to Station Hoboken, I mean, Albany only. The experiment worked today. Got commuter ferries going further from the Hudson down the Jersey Shore, all through to Staten Island, Brooklyn, Queens, London, long, so we'll have commuter ferries to Manhattan as well. So let's look to the left at Pier 40. Remember I said take the pier number, subtract 45 find the streets. What does that get you? 0 Street? We never had a 0 Street. No. Today you call that Houston Street. It's Houston, not Houston. That's how we say New York. That's the middle of that wide pier. But we used to call that North Street, and that's what we called it in 1811. That was the northernmost street of New York City. This city literally starts at the bottom, at the southern tip of Manhattan. The Dutch colonial city of New Amsterdam only got up to Wall Street. That's half a mile tip and walk up the alley. The English take over for over 100 years. Their city New York only got another half mile. We run them out. There's two living things, the old-fashioned European one street, Townway, right? You know, we lived up to there. That's 2 miles up the island. The island's over 13 miles long. That's how we've got over 200 years after Henry Hudson sailed by. Yeah, I mean, we had some other things going on. Like Greenwich was there, and then north of North Street. But that was then the town outside of New York City. That was our first suburb. Of course, the buggy era. Mulsanne was wilderness. So in 1811, we mapped the wilderness, figured at least declare where all the streets can go once that speed things up. And Manhattan's from an American Indian name for land of many hills. So we mapped all the hills, practically met every tree. We looked at that map, ignore the hills completely, did straight lines, right angles, based on number, and that's the grid map. That works. We searched up and filled the rest of the island in less than 9 years. And I might just fill another compromise that we'll look at the yellow towers in the Hudson River on the left and on the right. And those are the towers of the Holland Tunnel. So the Holland Tunnel does not go to Holland. Now, there's a light there that tells us Jersey City. We named it for the engineer design of Clifford Hall. There's one to Marcus Achievement. See, the Holland Tunnel was the first underwater tunnel built for cars. Opened in 1927. Before that, we didn't think such a thing would ever be possible because cars have toxic fumes. Get stuck in the tunnel in traffic, everybody dies. And that would be bad. So that's the solution. Those towers circulate the air better, out better, in. I'm not saying it's fresh down there, but it ain't gonna kill you. It makes it possible. Now take a look up and to your left. You see One World Trade Center. That's the official image of Freedom Tower if you like. But officially, that's One World Trade Center. Officially, the height includes the antenna mast on top, which gives One World Trade Center a full official height of 1,776 foot tall, and that's symbolic. When we see the Statue of Liberty, the second time I go to the harbor, which should still be holding a plaque that says July 4th, 1776. That's the date of the Declaration of Independence. That's the birth of this country, and that's the meaning of the height, which does not make it the tallest in the world. It is not, but you can always win a record beyond phrasing. What World Trade Center tallest building? New York City, New York State, United States, North America, Western Hemisphere. That's 5 records. And tallest building, according to Canadian, tries to bring up the CN Tower. That is not a building. That's an antenna with a restaurant built on it. We've got a bigger antenna in North Dakota, so the restaurant certainly goes there. Now, One World Trade Center is part of a new World Trade Center building on the grounds of the old World Trade Center. We're not building the size of the Twin Towers. It's been the point you've seen why. I have to say the locals there answer the question everyone's asked me for over 22 years. Where were they? But they also show you how small their foundations were. 1 acre each. Now the 16-acre site initially, and the memorial's only 5 of those acres. So we've ever in the build, we're building. So the left to the north of number 1. That's the new 7 World Trade Center, which only got the name because it built on the site. The old 7 World Trade Center, the 3rd building that fell in 9/11. So that's symbolic too. To the right, well, number 2 is supposed to be there in Finland. The Lieutenant Bill Act was in COVID just before construction when they attempted to build. That's the only building not done. Further south, number 3, done a few years ago. Further south, number 4, done before that. And when they're all done, the 4 main buildings are going to go north to south and for us left to right. 1, 2, 3, 4, descending in height. But let's also take a look to the right of Jersey City. And this neighborhood of Exchange Place is today an extension of the financial district of New York. Yes, we used to have the port on both sides of both states, now the financial district on both sides. That is not why they call that neighborhood Exchange Place. Sounds like it should be. That's what they called it over 100 years ago. The oldest buildings there are from the 1990s. Most of them are newer than that. So why did we call Exchange Place back then? What do we have? More terminals, like in Hoboken, several more. We could change from a train to a boat, but our waterfront is gone. Although we kept a relic here too, because on your right is where we used to have a massive Colgate factory, and that was there for generations. Made a lot of toothpaste. Tore the factory down in the 1990s, but we kept the clock. Why? Also open clock, that's why. And we kept that. Further down the coast there, you see what looks like a big brick church with a clock on it. But that's another one of the old terminals, older than Hoboken, but again, a place where you change from a train to a boat and vice versa. So no train's gone out of there since the 1960s. The tracks are gone. Boats still go out from there. Actually, you're trying to get a boat to Liberty Island, Ellis Island from New Jersey. That's where you go, Liberty Terminal, Liberty State Park. But when that opened in 1889 as the Central Railroad Terminal, that was the biggest railroad terminal in the United States at that point. 14 sets of tracks going to all over North America. And not built for the Statue of Liberty. Now this built for someone's going to go 3 years later on Ellis Island, a new federal immigration center. Yeah, I still hear people assuming that these were mostly living on the Lower East Side of Brooklyn. Some of them did. Most of them, 80%, will go out through that terminal to all over North America. And that's why that terminal is built. It was to churn the immigrants out to the rest of the continent. And not just by train. In those days, we had a line of trucks next to the trains. Taking immigrants straight to factory, straight to a job, not even a day off. Including my own people, for like many Americans, have immigrant stock all around. Now, my mother's side is earlier, so her people went down through Battery Park on your left. And see the old white pier with the clock tower appearing. Battery Park's just beyond that. And just in Battery Park, by the pier, is a round brick building, 1-story tall, called Castle Clinton. Originally Ford built for the War of 1812 to see it built. But it's Castle Garden, that was the earlier, much tinier immigration center. That's how my father's side comes over 1910, 1911. That was Ellis Island. That was my grandparents on my father's side. They came from Ukraine, the Austrian Empire, and never Russia. But they came here in a very frantic circumstance. They were just married, just had the first kid. And my grandfather ends up here suddenly. But he had to find a job right away to send for the rest of the family. But he knew nothing about this country. He knew no one here. But he got through Ellis Island. They got to shore at that terminal. He saw his truck right there taking people away to a job. Now there was a line of men at this truck, and my grandfather saw they're asking each man this question. He had no idea what the question was, but he saw that anyone who answered the question with the word yes, they got on the truck, they got the job. Anyone said anything else, they were sent away. So he got online. He waited his turn, they asked the question, he said yes. And he got on the truck and he got the job. And the question was, do you speak English? Now, he didn't know the word yes, but that was the first word of English he ever spoken in his life. Fortunately, it's a couple weeks from managing to figure that part out, but they said knows the way around the place. Keep the job. And that's how my grandfather got his first job in America. Incidentally, that's how I got this job. Yes. Now remember, we're catching Liberty back. But let's look further down the harbor. Staten Island? Yeah, that's Staten Island. All the way down there, the southernmost of the 5 boroughs of New York City. And Staten Island goes halfway down the state of New Jersey. It's a lot bigger than people realize. In area, Staten Island is 3 times the size of Manhattan. Everybody forgets Manhattan is the smallest of the 5 boroughs in area. On the other hand, everybody remembers Staten Island is the smallest of the 5 boroughs in population, and that's here. Only in New York City would you call 495,000 people a small population. Yeah, I was telling Staten Island would be the biggest city in most states. Now that island ahead of us, we still call Governor's Island, even though there hasn't been a governor on there since the colonial days. We used to have the military there, and that's from the colonial period up through the 1990s, over 200 years. They're gone, now it's a park, but a park that incorporates some of the old military hardware. And you're gonna see on the coast of Governor's Island, there ahead of us, a round brick building called Castle William, and that was a fort built for the War of 1812. Now I just used that phrase about Castle Clinton, you see behind the white tent there. I'm gonna use that phrase again though before this tour is done, because the fact is, we built a lot of forts for the War of 1812, and there's a reason. We lost New York City to the British Army and the American Revolution. They held the duration of the war. Yeah, see, that's what there was the long list that had us related to that. And New York City was the last place the British Army left when the revolution was over. And that was such a trauma that day. November 25th, 1783, we marked that day as a holiday. We celebrated New York for over 100 years. The evacuation day, we celebrated the original Brexit. See that white structure to your right? That's the ventilation shaft. Brooklyn Battery Tunnel. That's our longest underwater railroad tunnel. Longest in the country, 9,170 feet. We're supposed to call the Battery Tunnel after former governor. I don't know if you'd like to remember. To the battery. We're going to keep going for the Battery Tunnel. That's Brooklyn ahead of us. I'm going to talk about that on the way back. So let's look at the other end of the tunnel. To your left, the Battery, the southern tip of Manhattan. That's Battery Park. Why do we call the southern tip of Manhattan the Battery? Battery of Cannon. Before the War of 1812, lead back to colonizing the city. Exactly. The old red door Manhattan, the financial district, walk the streets of the New York City, a much smaller New York City than about a whole complete city, not just finance. This is what happened in old cities that start small. That's together. We did the great in 1811. But in 1811, Wall Street was the center of town still, and among other things, a residential street. It's like the center of town starts developing with the onset of the 19th century. But as things move up, they move out. By 1850, not a single person lived on Wall Street, not one. That's the case in the 1990s. But when everything moves out, you don't move the money, you don't touch the money, you build it as a financial district by quality, by design. That's the standard model. Here's the catch. Move out, have to move out. When they want to move out, because finance has always been, still is the biggest employer in New York City. More transit really based on dragging people, or the new cheap back there, back to work. That's what they were towards around 68,000 people in the financial district. The newer ferries are small boats. They come from many more locations. They all live in 11 Wall Street. The helicopters up here since they for tours, that's the mining taxes. But just look at the subway numbers. All roads lead to Rome. Most subways lead to the financial district. And there's a broad range of New Yorkers that work here too. You'd be shocked to know I used to have Ralston, that way going on the waterfront to your left right now. Yeah, that's back water for a company called Solomon Brothers. So I don't know if you know, not working there anymore. Veteran Solomon Brothers. Not around anymore. We're going up these roads. You see that yellow is nothing but South Avenue. Nice architecture, 1930. But I'm really pointing that out because that's on the north side of Wall Street. We get up there, we'll see down Wall Street to the end. And Wall Street was the end of New Amsterdam. That's as far as it got. That's also where the Dutch built the wall, the military wall along the northern end of their city, and they built that wall primarily to keep out the British. The British up in Connecticut, where you see some Dutch claims, the Dutch said they come from Preston, overland from the north, so they built a wall. Most of that 100 years was also the busiest port of the world. So the East River is full of ships. You remember the waiver tree, that's how big the ships were. So any bridge went over the East River had to go over one giant leap so the skies were mass to send the ships underneath. No one can build a bridge as long as this high. If someone develops it right now, take for granted. That's a steel cable that holds up the bridge. The man who mastered steel cable in the 19th century, John Augustus Rutland, is the man who designed the Brooklyn Bridge, the longest bridge in the world, one and open, 1,595.5 feet from tower to tower, using steel cables to build the span, and steel girders built towers taller than any building had been built before. Now you don't see the steel in towers because building with steel was a new thing. Some people are nervous about new things and keep those people calm. But almost always best to hide the steel inside stone, even though the new steel is strong. When the people watched the bridge go up, it took 14 years to build, they saw the steel was working. When the project started, New York was still a five-story city. Before the bridge is done, we're building our first skyscraper buildings using steel girders built taller, steel cables go up, elevators and built for people safely. We break through the five-story limit with steel technology first using the Rutland Bridge. The Rutland Bridge is what makes this whole city possible. As time goes on, we learn to trust the steel more. Next up is this blue bridge, that's the Manhattan Bridge. And you're going to see right through the towers of Manhattan Bridge. You might think, that can't be as strong as the Brooklyn Bridge. Well, think again. If I'm doing a tour on a bus, I can't take the bus over the Brooklyn Bridge. Too heavy, not allowed. Nothing bigger van is allowed over the Brooklyn Bridge. But I can take the Manhattan Bridge. I have to say vans, buses, trucks, double-decker buses, and subway trains go over the Manhattan Bridge. Brooklyn Bridge was like 80% stone, 20% metal. By 1909, Manhattan Bridge, 80% metal, 20% stone. Less volume as a structure, more steel, so more strength. And then we have the Williamsburg Bridge. By now, you're probably wondering how many remember these bridges, but that's the easy part, folks. Brooklyn, Manhattan, Williamsburg, BMW. But they're not in order. The Williamsburg Bridge is the second bridge over the East River that opened 20 years after Brooklyn Bridge was built. By 1903, we're not hiding the steel anymore. It's out there for all to see. Also, the Williamsburg Bridge is longer than the Brooklyn Bridge. Yes, it's in the record by 4.5 feet. That's rounded up again. That work is showing off. But the Williamsburg Bridge is stronger and can carry trucks and buses and subway trains. The last point is really impressive because in 1903 the subway wasn't running yet. But we knew it was coming. We were ready for it when we got there. But before we could build the Williamsburg Bridge, there was something about New York City that had to change. And the thing to remember is when they opened the Brooklyn Bridge, it was a bridge between two separate cities. New York was just Manhattan. Brooklyn was its own city. Now, New York, just Manhattan, was already in population the biggest city in the country for that work. Brooklyn was the third biggest in the country. There was over 1 million people then. There's only 10 cities in the U.S., over 1 million people now. So these are two major cities. That's the problem. Building between two major cities is a lot like building between two states. And the only way to get the Brooklyn Bridge built, it had to go from City Hall, Manhattan, was then City Hall, Brooklyn. Not a smart route, still not. But you had to keep the mayors happy. But the people of Manhattan, when the Brooklyn Bridge opened, they looked across the East River and saw something they were not used to seeing. Space. Understand we had a lot more people living in Manhattan in shorter buildings than now. Manhattan was a much more crowded island those days. But they looked across the river, saw spacious places in Brooklyn where they could live and still get to work on time if we build more bridges. But to build more bridges, we're going to have to get rid of at least one of the mayors. As all the consequence. For 15 years after the Brooklyn Bridge opened, we had the Act of Consolidation, 1898, where New York City goes from just Manhattan to 5 boroughs, taking over Staten Island, Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, all at once, because at that point there were more people living in Manhattan, the smallest of the 5 boroughs, an area, than those other 4 boroughs put together. But now we're consolidating. Now we can start to build. Starting with the Williamsburg Bridge, which does not go from City Hall to City Hall, and it really wasn't about going to Brooklyn. It was all about getting out of that neighborhood. The other end, the Lower East Side, was the age of immigration. When this bridge opened, was the most crowded neighborhood on the planet, more crowded than modern day Calcutta. They built the Williamsburg Bridge so people Lower East Side could escape and take over Brooklyn. And then we started building bridges and tunnels like What's not so obvious is when we use the old Carson waterfront for that same purpose. You can see that brick structure that's past the Williamsburg Bridge on the northern side. You're going to see a big yellow sign on that building. I don't care what that sign's telling you. There ain't been no sugar there since 2013. And that's when the sugar sold the property. They ceased production about 9 years before. And when they ceased production, that's the first we're not making sugar in this city in the history of New York City. It was a big part of our history too. So we landmarked the building. With that on the back, we kicked the four outside walls and the chimney. They're over 100 years old. You know, that sign's a lot of and a year ago, that was an empty shell of a building. We filled that shell back up. That's what we do, folks, factory after factory. Doesn't matter what the factory made. It could be sugar. It could be envelopes. I remember they converted the old Excise factory on Atlantic Avenue. Frankly, this boat gets stuck in the water too long. This supposed to become luxury apartments. On the Manhattan side, the left side, there was a very different story. We're going past a long, slow, let's call them nondescript buildings, a couple miles worth. Ultimately up to 23rd Street past the power plant. These were the first residential buildings built on Manhattan waterfront. These are built after World War II. We're still the biggest one in the world, building Emerson site. But did we build luxury apartments? Not exactly. Housing projects, co-ops, more housing projects that passed the power plant. Stuyvesant Town, that serves emergency housing for returning veterans from World War II. This was the mindset then. Folks, if you're really desperate for a place to live, I'm sorry. You're going to have to live on the waterfront. There's a different waterfront now. There's also a look, then we give a nice little look at the Empire State Building. There it is, past the power plant. You know it. The total built in 1931. The empty state building had no tenants above the 38th floor. Bit of a problem for a 102-story building. And the whole building industry squeezed to a halt after that opening, not to recover until after World War II. And the Empire State Building, we couldn't go bankrupt, because many of the buildings that era did. And you look up the aisle, see next to that Med Light building, see the one with the Pointed Spider top, you probably know that too. That's the Price Building. Tallest building in the world 1 year before the Empire State Building. That did go bankrupt. They had to be the architect. But fortunately, the Empire State Building had an observation deck. That turned out to be a huge hit, even during the Great Depression. You know, it's cheap affordable thrills, only 50 cents a ticket back then. But so many people with 6 cents say they go for bankruptcy. And I think you'll recognize the price of the Empire State Building. There's a building that's going to come out behind the power plant in just a second. Keep looking to your left. See that slender white tower with a little gold cupola on top? The Metropolitan Life Tower, 23rd Street. Probably don't recognize that, but that was the tallest building in the world in 1909. See, New York first had the tallest building in the world back in 1890, and sadly we didn't keep the first one. But a building called the World Building went up just south of Brooklyn Bridge.